What's going on, guys? Welcome back to your Lake Fork Guide. Today, we're going to break down, give you all the how-to top secret guide tricks on how to catch fish on the most predictable, sure bet pattern you can find for truly giant bass on Lake Fork. So it is now officially fall. Like, it's for real fall. The leaves are dropping, the leaves are turning, the acorns are on the ground. Man, the weather's changed, and that brings about a pattern. It comes up on Lake Fork most years. Every once in a while, it won't be as good as others. Like, this pattern won't be as strong as others. On years when this pattern is good, guys, this is like the most sure bet that I know of any of the patterns on Lake Fork that happen year after year. This is the safest bet to know you are throwing potentially at the fish of a lifetime. Like, there's some giant bass on this deal. We're talking about fall bass fishing, offshore structure fishing on Lake Fork. You're going to be targeting the biggest bass in the lake. They're going to be there, and I'm going to give you all the clues today on how to identify when they're there and, of course, how to catch them. Hey, guys, if you're looking to get out on a guide trip, man, this is one of my favorite times of year to film. Man, I love fishing. Let's be real. I love fishing the entire year. But, man, I love when it gets cold. Like, it gets cold, people go hunting. Lake gets a little empty. I absolutely love Lake Fork and some of our other lakes around here this time of year. Got some openings for guide trips. If you want to get out, holler at us at 903-519-1542. You can text or call there anytime. You can also reach out at yourlakeforkguide.com, send an email through there. Man, we'd love to have some time with you on the water. If you want to be one that gets out with us, we're here to do it. So holler at me if you need a guide trip. We'll have a good time. So what is going on with this sure bet pattern? Well, every fall when the water gets into the 60s, multiple species of fish will gather on the same type of structure offshore. They'll gather in the same spots. And what happens is you get a lot of the juvenile fish in the lake, or a lot of the smaller species in the lake. So you get yellow bass, smaller crappie, you'll get smaller white bass, and smaller catfish and bluegill. Like, they'll all get on the same offshore structure pieces. So when that happens, that is ringing a giant dinner bell to the biggest bass in the lake. I mean, the absolute biggest bass in the lake. We're talking about fish that are about the size of your hand, some a little smaller, but most of them about the size of your hand. That's the type of bait fish that really big bass want to eat. I mean, you guys know that. That's a no-brainer right there. When you gather up thousands of those and pack them tightly on structure offshore, it becomes pretty obvious why this is going to ring such a big dinner bell for these big bass. What you will see when you graph these type of spots, you will just see an abundance of life. You will see walls of shad. And the reason they're there is the shad pile up on these structures. And we're going to talk about what structures they are and all that here in a minute. When those shad pile up on those structures and all these smaller fish pile up on those structures, you'll get wolf packs of 3 to 5 or maybe 6, 7, 8 big bass. Usually it's around 3 to 5 big bass that'll kind of hang around these schools of fish and hang around the perimeter and the outside edges, and then every once in a while go up there and eat something. Now, these big bass are by no means easy to catch. They never are when you're trying to catch a trophy bass, right? Like, and by the way, this is no live scope required. Like, live scope can make this better in some ways. This is no live scope required. We've been running this pattern for so long. Like, it's been going on for a while. So no live scope required to do this. All you got to do is graph with your regular graph. Find these overwhelming amounts of life. Find the overwhelming, like, big walls of shad. Find the just tons and tons of life in yellow bass and white bass and all that mixed up there. When you find that, you can rest assured there's probably going to be some big bass around it. And a lot of times you will even see and identify on your 2D sonar, down scan, side scan, you'll see those big arcs and big blobs on those traditional types of sonars hanging around. As you're graphing and seeing all this other life, you'll see 1 or 2 or 3 of those bigger fish hanging in there. Sometimes right in amongst them, that's usually when they're feeding on them, or sometimes right off the edge, which is a common thing. You see that more often than not. So that's what's bringing them there. What type of area do they get on? So I actually made, as I said, we've been running this pattern for a long time. I actually made a video like 8 or 9 years ago on this channel explaining this exact pattern and talking about the types of areas that we like to look for on this pattern. And I couldn't say it any better today than I said it then. So we're fixing to throw it back and let you guys see some old clips of me explaining the type of areas that I'm looking for. The overview is pond dams and road beds. pond dams and road beds, it's long, narrow, flat spots. You're about to hear me say that a bunch on this clip. But long, narrow, flat spots, which road beds and pond dams create perfectly. Some of the longer points create these as well. 15 to 20 foot road beds and pond dams. You're going to hear me talking about that here in just a second. Check out this old clip right here, me breaking down the types of areas for the fall offshore structure fishing that you want to look at.
All right, so here's the next one, and this is one of our road beds. Now, the contour lines don't show it accurately on here. This road bed actually will top out right around 18 feet right now, and you can see it just parallels that deal. And there's even an old sunken bridge right there where it says bridge. There's an old sunken bridge right there, and that part, of course, out in the middle is a little bit deeper. But this part over here where you see all my squiggly lines where I've been graphing, that's the stretch of that road bed that tops out in about 18 feet. And that's another area that they've been using. In fact, the big fish that you guys are about to see caught here in a minute came off this spot right here on that jig. All right, so here's another one. You guys can see did a lot of fishing right in here, found some fish schooled up right in here. But this is a good example of how long, you can see it's just a long flat ridge. Again, this one tops out in 16 foot, has a little low spot down here that tops out in about 19, and then back out here on the end it goes back to 16. And what's funny is both those spots around 16, you can see where I did a lot of fishing in there, sat right there for a long time, and you can see where I did a lot of fishing out here on the end of this point. So long area. That is a huge area right there, guys, where those fish can move around up and down that ridge and work those variety of bait fish that they're really keyed in on this time of year, because they're eating a lot of different stuff, some shad, some crappie, but they're really keyed in on those barfish, and they can move around and ambush them off and on that ridge. And you see right next to it, 40 foot of water right there. That's the other big key element that all these have, is very close relation. There's 30 plus foot of water topping out in 16 right here, and you got 40 down here. So
there you go. Like I said, couldn't say it any better now than I said it then. Now, the part of this video that I needed to do a refresh and update on is how do we catch them? I feel like I've gotten a lot better at catching these really big bass than I used to be. If you would have watched that whole old video, you'd have seen me talking about big flutter spoons. Of course, the jig and spoon thing we're still going to talk about here in a minute. That's still a factor. But a lot of it was big flutter spoons, big deep diving crankbaits, things like that, to try and target these really big bass, trying to imitate the yellow bass and the barfish, which I feel like is kind of the majority of these schools of smaller fish is made up of yellow bass because we have so many in Lake Fork. And I feel like that's also what these bass are targeting the most, because they are like, they're like 5 to 7 inch perfect little size for these big bass to eat. So I used to throw the flutter spoon a lot, the big spoon, big old hubcap, big old chunk of metal. Not so much anymore. You will still, I caught some big fish back in the day doing it, but not nearly as consistent as I wanted to be. What I have found going forward is that my best bet to catch those big fish on a day after day basis. And again, understand, this is only a 1 or 2 bite deal per spot. Like if you get 1 or 2 bites on a spot, that's a win. A lot of times it's no bites on a spot where you see all this activity. Often it's 1 bite. So if you ever catch more than that, dude, you're just killing. Like that spot is loaded up and you're killing it. There's not that many of these really big ones around there, and they're really big and hard to catch. What I've been throwing here lately, and this year it's been the main breadwinner, is old big perm. I'm giving them something, a large profile, because they are eating big bait. Like they're eating these barfish and salmon. They're eating big bait. I'm giving them a big profile bait, but I'm giving them something that I can fish just insanely slow and keep in their face a long time, which is an important factor, I think, too. So I'm rigging it up on a big 3/4 ounce shaky head, big 7/0 hook, and that's the big 9-inch straight tail worm from Smash Tech. They're not even in production anymore. You can't get these, but you can buy the Excite Bait straight tail worm. Is a straight tail worm with no salt, which that's the key component to this. It has no salt, so a lot of buoyancy, tail stands up really good, all that good stuff. You can also get the Zoom Magnum trick worm. Boys, I've caught a bunch of fish on the Zoom Magnum trick worm on that same shaky head over the years at Lake Fork. This is a color I've been throwing this year. This is Blue Fleck. Man, I don't think color matters too much. It's nothing like the color of what they're eating. I think it's just a matter of getting something in the right size profile that will stay down there and hang around them for a long time. Okay, and that's the deal. So what I'm doing now is I'm getting on these spots, graphing, seeing where the most life is. I park my boat right on top, right in the middle of wherever I see the most life. So wherever I'm seeing the most yellows, whites, smaller fish, I park my boat right there. And I cast 360 degrees around my boat, off the sides and the drops of these flat spots, going up and down these road beds at time, and then off the sides as well. So I'll just fan cast 360 degrees around with the big worm. And I also like to use a big jig, a big profile jig and a big profile worm. In fact, I can throw it back and show you. We were throwing a big jig some back then, and this is old footage. I don't run the cameras on the water all the time like I used to, but here's some old footage of a really big one getting caught on this exact pattern on one of those spots I just showed you. I'll show you a big jig fish right here.
There we go.
You got a bass?
Yep.
Big bass.
Yep. I thought there was something on there. Get the net, Billy. Oh, gee.
Easy on it, baby. Where you at? Lean on it. It's a big bass down there.
That's huge, man.
That's a giant.
Holy shit. Look at that.
That's why we fish this off.
Man.
That's a donkey.
That is a donkey. Beast. Look
Lake
at this
Fork.
beast. Look at that.
Woo.
So there you go. There's evidence they will bite a big jig. I've been catching them on big worms here lately on these offshore spots, man. I think that's a better way to do it than the big spoon. I'm finding that I get bit more consistently, okay, day in, day out. I get bit more consistently using the big worms than I did the big giant spoons for this particular pattern. And I really do think it's just because of how long I can keep it in their face. I think that's the big deal. Now, the other thing we do on this stuff is we throw a jigging spoon, okay? We throw a 1 ounce slab jigging spoon. Show you what I'm talking about. This is one. It's kind of got two different colors. You got a little chartreuse on one side. You got a little silver flake and blue stripe on the other. It's just a 1 ounce slab spoon. That's a homemade deal. Not homemade. It's made by Joe Spates, who, again, not in business anymore. His shop's not open anymore. You might can find some Joe Spates spoons at Lake Fork Marina or something like that. But that's the Joe Spates jigging spoon. I like that one. Man, it's a slab spoon. You could go buy a Cotton Cordell or whatever you want to use. But use a 1 ounce jigging spoon. Couple reasons. Number one, you do catch random bass on the jigging spoon. Like greenfish show up on the jigging spoon. So you want to have that going. And I like to use the 1 ounce because I think that gets me a few more bites from the green ones. Yeah, I'll still catch all the yellows and whites and little ones. And why do I want to catch the yellows and whites and little ones? Boy, I'm scatterbrained today, but here we go. We're chasing all of them right now. We're running in circles. It's okay. Bear with me. Hang in there. Pay attention. We'll get you there. Eventually, we might land a plane. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I like to catch the yellows and whites when I'm sitting on top of that spot because with me, in my particular situation, I've got my customers in the boat. They're throwing the big worm, the big jig. I've got me in the boat. I'm throwing the jig and spoon, and I'm usually just dropping it right down in front of the boat. I'm sitting right on top of the life source. I'm pitching it 10 feet out in front of me, whatever, just keeping it close to the boat, hopping it up and down. Just hop, hop, let it fall. Hop, hop, let it fall. Over and over and over again. I'm doing that, trying to catch those yellows and whites, trying to get some feeding activity triggered and fired, trying to get those bait fish moving around, trying to get them active. I feel like that draws a lot of attention from the bigger fish. I feel like if I can get things on top of that spot around my boat feeding, then that, we've all seen sharks in feeding frenzy, and bass really ain't no different. When you see all that activity, all them bait fish get to running around, the yellows are moving around and feeding, I think that attracts the bass. I really feel like it does. So that's what I do on a daily basis when I'm doing this, is I go out there and try to pop them yellows and whites. And then every once in a while we have a day where we start catching greens on the jigging spoon, and I'll let my customers throw that, and now they're catching a fish every other cast, or every cast sometimes. They're catching a white, and then a yellow, and then a crappie, and then a green, and then a white, and then a green, and then a yellow. And it's fun, dude, especially when you mix a big one in there every once in a while. Like, that's a lot of fun. So that's kind of how we go about that pattern. Those are kind of the baits that I'm using these days to target them. Now, an Alabama rig's another thing, especially as it gets colder, it's going to get better and better. So if you ever run across one of those spots and you don't see, here's the one outlier. This is the other update we need for this video. If you run across those spots and you don't see, okay, the yellows and whites and the smaller fish schooled up, but what you see instead is a bigger school of regular largemouth. And these fish may not be all those giants that we're talking about, just the biggest ones in the lake. These fish may be 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 pounds. There's going to be some big ones in there because it's fork, but these may be more of like your 4 and 5 pound type fish. You see a school of largemouth up there and you see balls of shad off to the side. What's happening is that school of largemouth is up there because there's big thread fin hanging around, and they have run all the yellow bass and white bass out of there, okay? And when that's going on, then you can pick up regular baits. The jig and spoon will still work because they're eating shad. 100% the jig and spoon is still good. But you can also throw Carolina rig flukes, Alabama rigs, those type of things will get you bit as well. When you got largemouth predominantly on top of the peak of the structure, you will catch them doing that. Hope that makes sense. Sorry, haven't made a lot of videos this year, talking in circles a little bit. I'm trying to hold it together best I can. I'm hoping this helps y'all. The big key takeaway that I really want you guys to understand. When you get out there on this pattern, throw your jigging spoon down there, catch a couple yellows and whites, build some confidence in what's going on, get things fired up. Now pick up your big worm and your big jig and understand this. You are absolutely throwing at some of the biggest fish in the lake. They're there. They're around you. And if you fish slow enough and get a bite, it's going to be one that you're going to be real proud of. If you do it all day, if you were to go, I usually don't do it all day. I usually mix shallow fishing in with it. We hit 2 or 3 of these offshore spots, try to catch 2 or 3 big ones in a day if we can. That's really good. And if not, we got our shallow fish. If you do this all day and you catch 5 or 6, it's been a good day. Like, this is not a numbers deal. You are swinging for the fences. But if you want to know for sure that I'm going to take this big old worm and I'm going to throw it and sit it right in front of one of the biggest fish I've ever seen, this is the number one pattern to ensure that you're doing that without looking at live scope or something like that. Like, as far as a pattern goes, this is it. This is the best one to know I'm throwing at it right there. I mean, it's as good as it gets. It really is. It's a unique deal. It's only going to last. I mean, there'll be a little bit of this that hangs on into December and maybe a little bit in January. It's pretty much going to be over by about the weekend or 2 after Thanksgiving. This will be over. That's when this will end, depending on weather a little bit. But that's basically around Thanksgiving times when this wraps up. So it's really just kind of for this month that this goes on. And it's a special little deal. And I've had some big fish get in the boat over the years doing this. My gosh. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable the fact that, you just don't catch any little ones. Like, you just don't catch little ones when you're doing this pattern correctly and you're around the right setup. So, man, I hope this helps you guys. I hope it helps you understand what you're looking for. And I hope it helps some of y'all catch some really big bass. If it does, man, text us, message us, whatever. Holler at us. Let us know that you caught a big one using this pattern. We sure love that kind of feedback. Love to see you guys have success. I've said this before, but I feel like I haven't made a lot of content this year. I haven't made hardly any content this year. So I feel like we may have some new viewers that creep into the channel over the next few months as we start making videos. Here's what I want y'all all to understand about me. I'm a guide on Lake Fork. I've been guiding here. Started part-time guiding while working another job in 2015. So I've been guiding for 10 and a half years, whatever it's been. I went full-time in spring of 2017. So been doing it full-time for 8 years and change. It's never been lost on me for 1 second. Before all that, like in 2010, 11, 12, 13, I was a guy that read every fishing report that was out there. And at that time, there wasn't any YouTube fishing videos, not like this. And there wasn't a lot of dependable information out there. I read every fishing report on every website for Lake Fork I could look up for East Texas. I listened to the radio show. Hands up if you remember the radio show that would play at like 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday mornings as you're driving to the lake. You could listen to fishing reports from guides across the state. And I would just hope and pray that I was on there, that I was driving whenever Mark and Barbara Stevenson came on to give their report for Lake Fork back in the day. And it would air for 2 hours on Saturday, I believe, and 1 hour on Sunday. So it aired from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. Then it goes 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Getting sidetracked again. Anyway, I was consuming every TV show, trying to catch every tip off of those I could, DVRing back in those days, everything. And I've got techniques that I use to this day that I learned. And so I did get some good information from a lot of that stuff. There wasn't anything like this where I'm going, all right, guys, this is the month, November. Here's how it happens. Here's the type of structure on. Here's what you're looking for. Like all these details that we just gave you. That never existed. The whole reason that I went about doing things the way I do it, trying to give you guys this information, is because I've been there. Like, I feel you, man. Like, hey, you're my people. Like, y'all are my people now. Y'all are my people, right? I understand what you're going through. All you want to do is catch some fish, looking for some information to help you get started. And it's not like you want to hole jump anybody. It ain't like you want the top secret bait. You want to figure it out on your own. But god dang, when you ain't out there for 5 days and you go out there on Saturday, like, it helps to kind of know, hey, where's the pattern? Like, what is the pattern? What do I need to be looking for? Where should I start? If you can just give yourself a good starting point that you know is going to have some fish on it, man, that means the world to the weekend angler. And that's what I try to do here. That's what we try to do in every video that we make. We're always trying to cut the learning curve for you guys in all kinds of ways. So I hope we did it today. I really appreciate you watching. I guess we're just going to end this video with the same ending we had in the old video because I was messing around and caught a fish while I was trying to wrap the video up. So not on this pattern at all, but here you go. Have another fish catch to end your day on. And thanks for watching, and we will see you next time right here on your Lake Fork Guide.
Burning that trap, and I caught it. See, I had to come over here out of the wind to talk to you guys. So I figure I might as well go ahead and catch me a little old baby bass while I'm over here, right? Almost dark, but we still having fun, boys.